Do you like movies and games also? Listen, so much more they all know. Vice, Lotus, and friends, welcome to Corrective Consciousness.
Welcome to Corrective Consciousness, episode 53, the podcast about our lives and love of pop culture. I am your host, Vice the Bold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And Old Man Stompy.
Whoa, they're back in the same room. Well, the same Skype conversation.
The same podcast.
Yeah.
He's only here because of contractual obligation and affirmative action. So
Affirmative action. So what slot am I filling if it's affirmative action?
Old.
Yeah, we need an elder.
Beard.
So
you need an adult.
we need a chaperone for this piece of shit. But no, this is good. This is good. We can confront our differences head on rather than surreptitiously through trading of blows.
Yeah, secondhand listening of each previous cast.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good.
That's what they said about me? Ooh, just you wait till next week.
It's funny, too, because I don't actually hear about it. Like, I actually tend to hang out with Lotus Prince before, like, the podcast actually goes up and I have, like, an hour uninterrupted to listen to it. And he tends to, like, really sell the things that we say to each other. Like, I feel like Lotus really wants us to turn into an episode of, like, Jerry Springer or something. Where we just, like,
great.
kill each other.
Oh no, he's definitely like stoking the flames of our hatred.
You can throw your internet fists.
Of our anti-bromance.
Yeah, great.
As it were. Lotus is going to take over the podcast one of these days, and he's going to be like, this is all for me.
You know what? You're on my shit list now, right under Vice.
Great. I recommend that you play 4 Heroes of Light.
That's much better.
So, speaking of that, you referenced that on Facebook this week. Apparently about the Castlevania TV series. Mm-hmm. You said apparently this is the 4 Heroes of Light of TV shows, which you can't even blame on me because I didn't recommend the Castlevania show yet.
Yes, so that was not everything is about you, Vice. So in that
you're
case,
like my John Adams. You like love me and hate me.
That's kind of how I felt about Castlevania and 4 Heroes of Light. That was why it was appropriate. So is Vice like the 4 Heroes of Light of my friends? Maybe.
Wow.
Your other friends recommended him, and boy, were you disappointed.
I mean, you did kind of like come into our group because by reference, right? Because we were watching, like that was how I was introduced to you. You knew some of my other friends, like Lotus, from Rutgers, right? And I met you because we were all invited to some blaxploitation movie, one of the Dolomite movies.
Yeah,
at,
Human Tornado, which I watched this week, by the way.
Right. So that was not a great atmosphere for like getting to know someone, like. But anyway, so I guess I might as well just start with my my spiel for this week, right? Since you brought
go right ahead.
And gave me a nice segue. So so one of the things I watched this week was the new Castlevania anime that's airing on Netflix. It's only 4 episodes long, so I guess part of the reason why I drew the comparison with 4 Heroes of Light was that with 4 Heroes of Light, part of the reason why I complain about it so much is that it feels like one of the worst games that I actually managed to sort of enjoy enough that I still made it to the end. Usually a game is like good enough that I beat it, or like long enough, or like short enough that I play it anyway, or it's like just so bad that it's boring and I like put it away for a while. But 4 Heroes of Light, like I kept hoping it would be better than it was. And it never really got to that point, or I just never enjoyed it as much as I wanted to. And of course, I know that team went out and made Bravely Default, which I think fixed a lot of the problems I had with 4 Heroes of Light. So obviously they knew what they could have done better, and like I don't feel quite as bad for them anymore. But Castlevania, I mean, I was interested, of course, because it's always kind of video games have an unusual reputation, like not a great reputation when it comes to translating into other media. Like there are some good video game movies, there are some good video game books, but most of them are really, really bad, right?
Sure.
So I did kind of want to watch it. The most interesting part of the series is like the first 10 minutes and like the last 10 minutes, and the rest is just it's in that same vein where I kept feeling like I was watching something really tedious and like kind of banal, but like not so bad that I couldn't make it to the end of 4 episodes. And it definitely is intended to be like a prequel to what they hope is going to be more seasons. And
I think
like,
they just greenlit the second season, actually.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
it's going to be 8 episodes.
Yeah. So, without really getting too much into spoilers, it details like how the heroes of Castlevania 3, or this version of Castlevania 3, get together. You know, Alucard and Sypha and Trevor Belmont. But
and
like
Grant, I imagine.
I have not seen Grant yet. I don't think he shows up a lot in like the alternate canons of Castlevania. Like I know Sypha has been in Castlevania Judgment, and Alucard, of course, is in everything.
Well, Judgment. I mean, Sypha is important because she's supposed to be Trevor's wife, essentially.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. So like Grant is sort of a satellite character to the whole thing, and he isn't as important to the canon. So it's not clear to me if he's ever going to be in the series, or if he's going to be important. But he does not appear in the animated series at all, as far as I know.
Okay.
But I don't know, like the animation felt really stiff, and like Trevor, the actor playing Trevor Belmont, kind of, and the writing kind of makes him sound like a poor man's Jack Sparrow. Like he's drunk all the time. Partially because he's like an outcast from the noble houses of like the country that Dracula resides in this canon. And like there's not enough of the series to really make a strong judgment on. Like I said, the worst I could have made it through, with a higher opinion if like the animation was really high quality, but they saved all of their budget, it seems, for like the opening and the ending of the series, and that leaves you with like an hour and a half of like kind of tedious like dialogue. Like there's some backstory about the church being responsible for pissing off Dracula, and about how they're like really corrupt and power hungry, but all the important church people die pretty early on, so there's never really any payoff for that. There are like little sequences where they just randomly, it looks like they sort of arbitrarily tried to make the main characters do like something that looks like platforming from a video game. Oh yeah. So like they're exploring the clock tower, and once there's like a 2-minute segment where he's just like jumping across like stuff buried in a marsh. It's really unnecessary.
With vertically jumping fishmen coming out. And...
No, did they talk about it being a horrible night for anything?
That's plastic.
No, it is not a horrible night. There don't appear to be any memes, which is probably for the best.
Yes.
Actually, one thing I did hear that kind of throws me off is I hear there's swearing in the show, and while I understand that it would be rated M for like, or rated...
what a horrible night for a fuck.
Yeah, great. But like I heard that like while it would be like mature rated for like violence or something, swearing in Castlevania just sounds weird to me. Like I just wouldn't picture that happening.
So yes, there's a lot of swearing and there's a lot of gore and a lot of blood. And I guess it sort of makes sense because like Trevor spends a lot of time walking around talking to the actual people who have to live with like the armies of Dracula invading their towns and like stealing their children. So like of course they'd be swearing like crazy. They're really depressed. Like their life is literally a living hell. Dracula in the Castlevania canon is basically Satan.
Yeah, but it still sounds odd to me because, like, with Castlevania, except for, like, 2, I guess you don't really talk to much townsfolk, so I guess I just picture you silently platforming or, like, die, monster, like, just swearing, it would make sense in real life, but it just sounds weird in, like, a Castlevania product.
So
I wonder if...
Sorry, continue.
Oh, all I was going to say is I wonder if... I haven't seen this myself yet, and I'm a huge Castlevania fan. But there have been other things that have kind of referenced Castlevania over time, like things such as like the 80s OVA, or is it 90s OVA, Vampire Hunter D. So like, I'm wondering if the level of violence is kind of harkening back to that old style of anime, where OVAs were generally pretty violent.
I have seen the second Vampire Hunter D OVA, Bloodlust, because that got a theatrical release while I was in college, and like that was pretty bloody, but most of the gore is happening to like other monsters. I see. So it's somewhat less jarring, as opposed to this, where you're regularly watching people get disemboweled, and like someone getting like both of his eyes stabbed in is treated as a throwaway gag at one point in the series. So it's like it's pretty brutal. It's like B-movie, but not really fully committed to it. So it's a little weird. Like I said, the most interesting part of the series to me was the first like 10 minutes or so, which details how Dracula met the woman who he fathered Alucard with.
Oh, okay.
And that like kicks off the entire series, and that is like a series I would like to watch because they seem to have really good chemistry and they are really interesting characters. But that is not the focal point of the series at all. So if there's anything I would want to see in a second season of Castlevania, it would be like hearing about what they were up to, you know, or like what. I would almost like to see like a romantic comedy involving Dracula and his wife. Maybe that's what I really want.
You know what I want?
My vampire boyfriend.
No, I would like to see how he hires the werewolf and Frankenstein's monster from Universal movies, and like just every boss. Like, where does he find these guys?
So I mean, that's like literally how the series begins. Like like this woman, she walks into Dracula's castle. We have no idea how she got there, and like Dracula walks up and she's like, "What are you doing here, mortal?" And she looks at him and she's like, "I don't believe in vampires." So, what? How did you get here?
Wait till you see his upside down castle above his regular castle.
Vlad Chan, you are so kawaii.
Yeah.
Well, it never really delves into like it's written by Warren Ellis, right? Who's like a fairly well known comic book artist from a fairly well known North American comic book artist. So it isn't it's not like he came from the anime aesthetic.
He's a writer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have Carmela, who's just a mask floating around a room?
I do not recall seeing a lot of
that was Castlevania too,
monsters.
but
there weren't any Medusa heads just like knocking him off his balance.
Flying in a sine wave.
My God, that would be the most aggravating
reference.
like 10 minutes of television just to watch Trevor try to climb up a clock tower while Medusa heads knock him down and occasionally petrify him, like in Symphony of the Night. Wow.
Actually, when Retro Gamer was here this week, we actually played quite a bit of Castlevania 3 on the Famicom, so I'm kind of happy to hear that the anime was... I had heard about the anime and how much people were enjoying it in general, with small quibbles here and there. I'm glad to hear that it's about Castlevania 3. I didn't realize that. I hadn't really heard any specifics about it, so it's pretty cool.
I made like a Facebook post that like nobody understood because like I had made a post that said like the Netflix show
Ralph.
Yeah, it's not about Ralph, so fuck this entire show, and nobody understood the reference because that is pretty obscure, but everyone's like, no, the show's actually really good though. I'm like, you don't, okay, never mind.
Calling him, I don't know where they got Ralph from. Like how come Japan was like, no, he's gonna be Ralph.
Ralph Belmondo.
I think I've mentioned this before that I was really disappointed when I found out the canonical name of the Secret of Mana protagonist is Randy.
Yeah, Randy. Like, okay.
Yeah.
And like Final Fantasy
it's better
5,
than Butts.
Yeah, I was just gonna bring that up. Like I like when I played it on an emulator back in the day, Final Fantasy 5, I was like, Butts, clearly that's like a misspelling or a translation error. Nope.
So this is referenced in Final Fantasy 14, which is a good segue to the next topic I have for this week.
Oh, go right ahead. Yeah.
There's like a wind up Bart's figure.
Yeah.
And the flavor text for it says that like it references Final Fantasy 5, and it says like arguments over the spelling of this poor youth's name has led to many a hurt butts.
So dumb.
Extreme, and it's spelled Butz, so it's like very obviously a reference to what we thought his name would be when that game finally came over to America. In fact, it was Bart's.
It was just like in Hokuto no Ken, like the kid's name was like Butt, and I always thought it was supposed to be Bart, but nope. Again, like, all right.
Also,
like
the main protagonist's name in Berserk is kind of weird. Calling him Guts is kind of weird.
Yeah, but I mean, like, nobody made a mistake. It's not like, oh no, it surely must mean this instead. Like, no, it was It's a weird name, but we all knew what it was.
Yeah, it's meant to be Guts.
Yeah.
I have heard in the past that Final Fantasy V was supposed to be a little bit of self-parody compared to the very serious 4 and 6 around it.
Really?
Sure.
I'm sure it was partially intentional that it had kind of a weird, like, that the protagonist had kind of
goofy name,
a giggle-worthy name.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, on that topic, as I'm sure, as I've talked about before, also with Pyro and Mr. Ryu, I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy XIV lately. I never really got into an MMO before, as I mentioned, but this one has really grabbed me and my wife. And I guess part of the difference is that most of my friends have made at least an attempt to play. To those who play and have the time and disposition to play MMOs, most of my friends have made the attempt to like join us in the server we play on, including Mr. Ryu, and of course Pyro. And we've spent at least some time, all of us, partying together. Although, like, Pyro's had a lot of trouble finding, like... we tend to play really late at night. And I know Pyro gets really frustrated when people aren't, like, or get ahead of him in the storyline, or, like, or don't... Like, he's spoken before about how difficult it is to play an MMO with people who play different times of day, or, like, different amounts than you do. So we've had a little struggle, like, integrating him into our playgroup, especially as he's been trying to teach his girlfriend the game, and she's decided to be a tank, which is, like, the hardest class, like, subclass to play as. But yesterday, I went over to Mr. Ryu's house with my wife, and he carried us through the end of the main storyline. So now we're in the post game.
Oh, nice.
We're in the post game of 2.0. Which is the first of the first of the major releases of Final Fantasy XIV. So we have like 5 patches of content to go through. Then we can get to Heaven's Word, and then there's 5 patches of that, and then we can get into Stormblood. But that does mean that there's actually content that I can access and like reliably complete now. That's also something that Mr. Ryu and Pyro also have to complete. So we're kind of approaching the same sort of tier, which is really nice. It's nice that like the ideal party size in 14 is 4. Like every instance in the game is 4 or a multiple of 4. So having 4 players already, including my sister-in-law, who's level 70 and is like a top tier player in the game, it means that we're very flexible. We can do basically anything that we want to on a given night, which is nice. In general, like I don't know if I know both of you guys have played a bunch of RPGs in the past, but I don't know if you've had this experience. Like when I get like a Final Fantasy game, I'll like stare, at like what the post game is, and that will like make me want to get through the main game to see all these like cool things you can do and all these like powerful bosses you can fight.
I guess that's like the Disgaea phenomenon.
Yeah, it could be like Disgaea, but also like there's been a trend in some of the recent Final Fantasy games where they do a lot of drawing from series canon, where you get to like pit your heroes against like legacy bosses. I think Dragon Quest also did this in Dragon Quest 9,
like Bahamut and things like that.
Yeah, so like in Dragon Quest 9, the post game, the end game of the post game was like every major boss from in Dragon Quest series history, going all the way back to the Dragon
awesome.
Lord. So like I was strongly incentivized to learn how to build a party and like become powerful enough to like take on these legacy bosses, and they would level up as you go, and you could level them up to level 100. You could grind them just like you grind yourself. And like the level 100 legacy bosses were some of the hardest things that Dragon Quest has ever had, like in a main series game. So like in 14, I feel like I was motivated the same way. Like I saw that in the game they implemented a lot of representations of famous characters from Final Fantasy canon. Like in the 2.0 post game, you can do like literally the end game of Final Fantasy 3.
Oh wow!
And I think somewhere in Stormblood you can also fight like Exdeath from Final Fantasy V, and it's like a really good representation, a really good 3D modeling of the Exdeath character.
That's fantastic because I love Exdeath. He's just so like over the top.
Yes, Exdeath. What a great name.
Yeah.
I mean, they've localized it in other games where he's a character as Exodus. Also, like,
Exodeso, that does make sense.
Yeah, like I can see how you would get that spelling. So that's what he's called in Final Fantasy 12, because he's because someone like Exdeath is a member of the pantheon.
That's a good point, because I never thought about the various Zodiac summons, or not Zodiac, but yeah, the various FF12 summons being bosses. Like Exodus never occurred to me, but I mean Zeromus was just straight up in there, so I was like, why would they have Zeromus and nothing else? But if Exodus counts, then that'd be interesting.
Well, they have Chaos too, right? That's also a famous Final Fantasy boss.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Was that like from 1 or 2 or something?
Yeah, it's the Final Fantasy 1 last boss.
Okay.
So Chaos and Zeromus are the bosses in that game who look the closest to their original counterparts, but the final bosses of the first 5 Final Fantasies are all Espers in Final Fantasy 12, meaning they're Zodiac gods in all the Ivalice games.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which is cool. Like that was something they didn't have to do. Those characters weren't like they had spots left open because the Zodiac signs were originally assigned bosses in Final Fantasy Tactics.
Sure.
And they've kept those characters in every game that took place in Ivalice, and they filled in the remaining gaps mostly with final bosses from previous Final Fantasy games.
Sure. That's pretty neat.
So we're finally in that point, but part of the thing is the game is designed so that usually when a side quest opens up, or like the activator for it is pretty close to where the game would expect you to be if you were following through the main storyline. About the same time, you'd be ready to tackle that side quest. So that means that once I got to the end of the main storyline, I basically unlocked about 5 patches worth of content at the same time because I got to level 50, and also like cleared all the mandatory quests. So that meant that like I would go to a town and the NPCs would vomit like 15 side quests on me at the same time, and most of them don't like do anything, but like take you to a place where you can unlock a instance dungeon that you can do with a party. So I've just been like running from place to place like a maniac, just like looking for. So the quest icon that unlocks something in 14 is a little blue symbol with a plus sign, so you always know which quests are like just for loot and which quests are actually unlock like more content that you can do.
That's pretty nice.
But the whole map is just like full of these like blue plus signs now, and it's extremely intimidating, but also like incredibly awesome. Because all of these things are things I can do with Mr. Ryu and my wife and my sister-in-law and like all these other people I know who play the game, and like his friends who helped carry us through the final boss dungeon. Not that it's really hard, but it made it faster.
I find that kind of funny because, like, I think I'm kind of the opposite kind of player when it comes to RPGs. Like, I don't care at all about post-game content. And, like, once I'm done the story, I don't see a good reason to play. But to some people, that's when the real meat of the game is, because you can actually get into the meat of the mechanics.
I mean, again, with this guy, like, the actual story of the game is, like, probably 10% of what you'll be playing.
Yeah, so, like, in principle, I agree with you, and that's why I sort of made the comment. Like, most RPGs, I play like Vice does. I play to the end of the storyline, and the point I'm trying to make is that oftentimes I will, like, try to glance at the post-game a little bit and see what it entails, and decide, like, beforehand, if that's something I should budget, like, in my free time to try to do, right? It has to be compelling. So it's actually pretty rare that I do a post-game. I at least attempt to do it for most Final Fantasy games, just because they're so iconic, like in the RPG, like Zeitgeist. But for Final Fantasy 14, like, post-game, it's an MMO. Like, the post-game is the end game, right?
Sure, and it's spending time with your friends.
Yeah. So, like, that, all those things together, the fact that they designed the post-game so thoroughly, there's so much content, a lot of it is really compelling. It's a 3D representation of games that I played like 20 years ago, so there's a high degree of nostalgia. Oftentimes it makes sense in the canon of the world, which is important to me. Like, I don't like things just tossed into a game just because they look like something from 20 years ago. Like, it has to make sense in the canon of the world, which it tends to do in Final Fantasy 14, which is nice.
And they just add Pyramid Head.
Add Pyramid Head to Bomberman. It's like that Red Letter Media joke. Do you guys watch that Red Letter Media?
Yeah, I do.
Sometimes.
Yeah, because like they have that meme going that they started a while back when they watched like I think it was the trailer for Rogue One, where they're like, things are familiar to me. Like, I saw AT-STs.
Like Blue Milk.
Yeah, I saw AT-AT walkers and I clapped. Like, it's just like that. That's exactly what Pyramid Head in Bomberman with the Switch is. So I know what Pyramid Head is. Like, great.
So the reference I would make, not that a lot of people know this game, but there's a retro Zelda type game on Steam called Anodyne, and it's like it's a Zelda style game, but it's a ontological mystery. Like, you don't really know how you got to where you are, and you're trying to explore this world and find out why you're here. Mm-hmm. There's this village elder you talk to who guides you on your quest, and you can talk to this statue, and the statue says, the village elder in name only, for he is neither. And, like, if you don't know what that's a reference to, you might be, like, really confused. But, like, if you've played Link's Awakening, you might recall that that's a reference to a statue that you can talk to in Link's Awakening that says, like, the windfish in name only, for it is neither. And, like, that's a great... Like, Link's Awakening is a fantastic ontological mystery. Like, you don't really have any idea what's going on with that island until the very, very, very end of the game. And it's really creepy. And so, like, for Anodyne to try to create that same atmosphere, like, if you understand that don't understand that reference, the game seems creepy because it's very alien. If you know what the reference is from, then you have a framework to, like, parse that in, and it becomes familiar to you, and it seems less creepy. So it actually takes away from the game to understand the reference. That's what I don't like in nostalgia.
They even said in I think in a couple interviews about Link's Awakening that one of the things that influenced it was Twin Peaks, Link's Awakening specifically. So
Nice.
yeah. So which is another same type of mystery as well. So
Right. There's something seriously wrong with that town, and you never really find out exactly what it is.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
It's kind of like National Harbor.
Nice. So yeah,
For anybody who doesn't know, that's the town that MagFest
that
is
took me
in.
a second. Yeah, it's basically like a hotel, like guest
Town?
designs town. Yeah, it's not an actual town. It's just like if there's not an event going on there, then there's just no one there, and it's kind of like it's,
Right.
I
It's
don't
a
know,
town
slightly
with
creepy.
businesses. It's a town with businesses, and usually, like a center of town it develops over time. It develops naturally, and it has a center of town that doesn't support anybody.
Yeah, like if there's nobody in the hotel, then it's just like dead streets with pretty looking establishments. It's just like there's just nobody there.
Right.
Yeah, it's really weird.
So yeah, besides that, that was largely my week. Other than that, I watched some Kamen Rider like usual.
Yay.
I have I got up to episode 73, which means in the interim, Dr. Death is dead. He's been defeated by the Riders.
What happened to Deathman? Deathman is dead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that sounds like Mystery Men.
Yes.
Dr. Death is dead.
How do you watch Kamen Rider? I've been wondering how I should go about it. Are we talking about wares or?
We are talking about I am using the free internet store to procure this
Okay.
this series. So
Yar har fiddly dee, that kind of stuff.
I do not
Video
recommend
Napster.
my source. I do not recommend my source to any of my any of our listeners.
Gotcha.
I could obviously be compelled to buy Kamen Rider merchandise, and in fact, whenever we finally go to Japan, I probably will try to and support the series because I do enjoy it a lot. But
Well, you're in luck.
trying to watch 1,300 episodes of Kamen Rider is somewhat unsustainable if I'm actually buying the DVDs.
You're in luck. Retro, while he was here, and my girlfriend and myself committed to going to Japan next year. So
Next year,
yeah,
okay.
should get it all going.
All right, well, let us know the deets because you're not the only person who is going to Japan sometime soon. We're trying to ride on the coattails of. So
Yeah.
Sure.
all right, and that's about it. So a couple of one other shout out I will give is that the WWF recently finished filming the Mae Young Classic, which is their first in a long time women's tournament. They hired 32 women's wrestlers from around the world who were not on the main roster of WWF. Many of them were signed to developmental contracts, and they'll be airing that. It's a single elimination tournament. It's similar to the Cruiserweight Classic I was talking about a few months ago. There were a lot of fantastic matches in that, because a lot of these people were treating it as an audition, meaning that they were pulling out moves that they would never do on WWF television. So it was a very distinctive product from what you'd usually see.
That's kind of exciting.
And I think I've heard this match will be this tournament will be very similar. The highlights, like the favorites coming in, are a wrestler by the name of Kairi Sane, who is a very famous Japanese Joshi wrestler. Joshi is the Japanese term for women's professional wrestling, I think. And if I'm not mistaken, she wrestled as Kairi Hojo, both of which are Square Enix games references.
Wow.
Just like Kenny Omega, she pulled both of her names from video games.
Nice.
And her gimmick is that she's like the pirate princess, which is not One Piece related. It's actually because she's a professional yachter. I think.
Wait. Just to make sure here. So Kairi is from Chrono Cross and Hojo is FF7.
Kairi is from Kingdom Hearts, probably.
Who was I thinking then? Was I thinking Kid maybe? All right, whatever. Fine.
just saying.
All right, fine. I was halfway
Minus
there.
1. You're inching closer to Vice.
Oh no.
Anyway, so yeah, she's got she's a professional yacht pilot or something. I don't know what the term for that is.
A yachtsman?
A pilot,
Yachtswoman, yachtsperson.
a captain.
All right. So apparently they're keeping that at least partially in the WWE, and they're not afraid to talk about. It seems a little bit goofy to come out with a pirate steering wheel. It's real easy for that to come across as a little maudlin and goofy for to come out in pirate gear to a professional wrestling show. But I guess they're allowing her to do it as long as it's tasteful. And the other favorite is Shayna Baszler, who is one of the Four Horsewomen, one of Ronda Rousey's friends. So So they might also resurface. Rousey's not really been in the public eye very much since like retiring from UFC fighting.
Yeah.
But the rumor is that they're going to have the 4 horsewomen fight against the 4 of the top main roster women's wrestlers in WWF at one of the major pay-per-views soon. So those are the sort of leading strings that we can expect in storylines to come out of that. So watch for it. It taped, Thursday, and the episodes will start airing on the network pretty soon.
Nice.
Neat.
So that's my recommendation. Meanwhile, that's my week. I think I took quite a lot of time. So Lotus, why don't you take us away?
All right, so I got a few things going on. The first is just quick Skies update. At this point, I have finished editing 22 of the 52 installments, and I've been uploading for about a week now, and the first episode at the time of this recording on Sunday has now gone up publicly, so it's come to the point where everybody is able to watch the Let's Play. Hooray! So it's super cool to finally get that, really, really out there. Additionally, I had mentioned the difficulties of streaming or playing at all Time Crisis and Time Crisis Project Titan. More Time Crisis 1 than Project Titan, but even so, with the controller on the PS1. But I had done a Patreon stream of Time Crisis 2, and oh my god, that with the controller, that was so much easier. It was just way more generous. I think the main thing that made it more generous was that you could adjust your cursor speed, but also when you... I never had this problem with Project Titan, so I can't really say, but for Time Crisis 1, each section of the level has a timer, but it's kind of a timer for the whole level. Like, when you complete a mini section, when it goes wait as you go into the next section, then you get, extra time in addition to whatever you have left. And the problem is, if you ever run out of time, then you lose a life, of course, but you have to restart the whole area, which is really irritating. With Time Crisis 2, you have something like 40 seconds to complete a section, and regardless of how little or how much time you have left when you're done, that timer disappears when you complete that section, and when you go to the new section, a new timer spawns where you have 40 seconds from there. So, each particular section of the game is as long as it should be. It's of a set length, which I thought was way more lenient and made the game playable on home consoles. It's one thing if you can keep pumping in quarters, and that's why it's challenging. But for home consoles, you already bought the game. Can I play it, please? I mean, I understand if it's hard, but don't make it like Time Crisis 1 hard, where you really have to be crazy precise. So Time Crisis 2 is also a lot of fun, and it's got just ridiculous, colorful boss characters, one of whom just lifts up a missile and swings it at you. He gets stupid strong. I love that guy. And the post-game stuff is pretty cool too.
I wanted to ask you, does it allow you to play from both the perspectives? Does it allow you to play from...
I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, but if you're playing 2 players, then the second player has the other perspective, which is really cool, because there are 2 different perspectives of the game. As you're playing the game, you sometimes even see the other player looking at you, and as you're firing at enemies, you want to not hit your player character, the other player. So it's really cool. So each of you could cover the other. It's a really clever new mechanic in Time Crisis, where you're not just playing the same game and holding 2 different controllers and moving 2 crosshairs around. You actually are seeing different things, which is kind of cool. And Time Crisis 3. Time Crisis 3 has other gimmicks that we'll discuss when I actually play that one. So that's super fun. Also, this is a real brief one because I haven't yet...
You're doing Crisis Zone next, I imagine, because that came out before 3 in arcades.
That's a tough one, because on one hand, I should do Crisis Zone next, but on the other hand, at the end of my Time Crisis 2 stream, I said I'd probably be doing 3 next. So, just because... And then I looked up...
on the console, they were released in the order you're doing it in, but in the arcade, they were released opposite.
Yeah, so. I mean, just because I shouted out 3 first, I'll probably do 3 first. But if I had done my research first, then I guess I'd do Crisis Zone instead. But I'll still do it.
The cool thing about the console version, the PS2 version of Crisis Zone, is that it was a pretty large upgrade from the arcade version. They did a lot of improvements. It looks a lot better.
Even with 2 and 3, they did. I mean, in terms of content.
Yeah, it just looks better.
Okay.
Like the modeling and shading and things like that.
Excellent.
It's just a much prettier game on the PS2 version. So
Okay.
you're in for a treat. But you said there was a lot of post game content with 2. I wasn't aware of post game content.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, well, I won't go into too much detail what happens with 3, but it's not like what 3 does. But with 2, once you beat the game, you unlock sort of like mini challenges you can do, where it's like, you need to get such and such a score within a period of time, or you need to take out all the enemies without getting hit, or you need to take out this one really hard to hit enemy within like 5 seconds. You only have one shot, so once you know where he is, you can do it, but it still will get you a couple times. So there's a bunch of that going on in 2. I wasn't able to beat all of them, but I got pretty far. It was quite entertaining. And they also unlock like target practice at like the police academy, where you shoot the targets with the bullseyes on the chest and the headshot. And there's like a little clay pigeon, like 8-bit looking, probably lower than 8-bit, like just old school Duck Hunt style shooting game, which is kind of amusing, where there's 2 clay pigeons and you have 2 shots. So there's
you got to make sure
like
you
that.
play some Little John music while you do that. So it could be like skeet 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 skeet.
Perfect. Yeah, ski shooting. I get it. So so that's Time Crisis 2.
I'm funny.
Now the other thing, I can only mention this one really briefly because I haven't actually played it yet, but I would like to let's play it. I funded on Kickstarter like a year ago a game that finally came in the mail, and I was super happy to see it. Have you guys heard of Perception?
Yeah, so that's the one where you're the blind person and tap the cane in order to see...
it's pretty brutal because like
you see echoes, right?
Like I don't know
okay.
the plot of the game, but that is the basic premise. You're in a house and someone's trying to kill you, like real original. But the idea is, like you're blind, so it's really interesting because, like you said, you tap your cane to send out waves, and you can like perceive the waves. It's kind of like, I doubt that's how blind people actually, see. Like, it's not like actual visuals, but it's a video game, so you do what you gotta do. It's like Ben Affleck's Daredevil vision.
Daredevil,
it's how Matt Murdock has always seen, yeah.
That's exactly. It's Ben Affleck's Daredevil vision in the Daredevil movie. So you basically have that. But what's interesting is that that's the only way you can see. So you gotta kind of memorize where things are, because remember, if you have to make noise to see, then you're making noise. So if you're hiding, you gotta be really careful about when you do that. So it almost reminds me of White Day, where running around in the dark is super scary, but if you turn on the lights, then that'll attract the janitor who comes by and turns off the lights, so there's a better chance of him finding you because you're near lights that you turned on that shouldn't be on. It's kind of like that. Or it's almost like Alien Colonial Marines, where you got that alien stalking you the entire game, like Amnesia style. But the thing is, you remember that little device where, like, the iconic scene in the first Alien movie where they're tracking the alien, it was a little radar thing with a little blip as it's getting closer and closer to them? You have that in Alien Colonial Marines, but apparently if you whip it out, like, you can hear the little blips, and apparently the alien can hear it too, because even if you're hidden, it'll just grab you, and that's absolutely terrifying. So I guess Perception is kind of like that, where, like, use noise at your own risk when you're trying to stay silent and hidden, So it can be pretty brutal. So I look forward to playing that at some point. Otherwise, just 2 more games I got into recently. The first was I finally got around to trying out Attack on Titan on the PS4, and I think it's also available on Steam and Xbox One. And that game's a lot of fun, but it's got the Koei Tecmo, warrior style thing going on, where it's grindy, like, by design. So it's one of those things where I don't know if you'd want to play it for hours and hours, but any one level you play, you'll probably really enjoy. But I mean, it's what the anime is. You go out there and you fight titans, and they're hard to deal with because you got to swing up and get to their necks, and that's the game. It's a lot of fun, but you got to know what you're getting into. With the exception of that one, there are a couple parts you can play as a titan for reasons I won't go much into, although it's made clear early enough in the anime. But even so, most of what you're doing is like Spider-Man swinging up to Titans' necks and trying to slash them with your sword. If I had a complaint, and again, there's not too much they could have done about this realistically, but it's still a complaint anyway, maybe an unresolvable one, is that with Warriors games like One Piece and Dynasty Warriors, the fun of playing as different characters is that they have different play styles. Luffy in One Piece plays completely differently from anyone else because different people have devil fruit powers. But in Attack on Titan, everybody's web slinging and swinging swords. So I don't want to play as Eren. I want to play as Mikasa, or I want to play as Armin. It's like, but they all play the same. The difference is that some are physically stronger than others, or can have better leadership skills with commanding forces, but the basic gameplay is going to be the same because it kind of has to be. So that's the main complaint. But if you like what you get, then you're going to have a good time. So I'm working my way through that. It's pretty entertaining. The last thing I'll mention is I finally started just tonight recording my very first Patreon sponsored Let's Play, which I'll start uploading alongside Sky's once I am prepared to do so. Have you heard of the game Inside?
Yes.
So that's by the guys who made what's it called?
Limbo?
Limbo, yeah. Limbo.
Yeah, and it has a similar aesthetic, it has a similar play style. You move with the arrow keys and jump with them, and you press control to manipulate objects. The basic controls are identical, but it's a different setting. There are different mechanics beyond just pulling levers. There are other things you could do. Unlike in Limbo, you can actually swim, and some puzzles capitalize on being underwater. So there's cool physics stuff as usual, because that's how these games roll. So it's really interesting. Like it's not like, oh, if you've played Limbo, then you've played this. Like from a control perspective, they're the same, but they are definitely different games, and you don't have to just choose one and say you've seen them all. It's worth playing Limbo and playing Inside. Now, both games are very short, especially if you know what you're doing. So, I think this game is going to be 6 installments long. I almost beat it tonight. But it definitely goes into cool places. And unlike Limbo, both Limbo and Inside have secret areas where when you find the secret, then you get an achievement. But unlike Limbo, with Inside, getting all of the secrets allows you to access a secret ending on a New Game Plus. If you go to this part of the game and do this such a thing, then you'll see something different. So I don't know what that is, but I'm excited about, getting it. With Limbo, I think they actually did have a secret area, but it was more of just a secret area. You could skip this part of the game if you find this crazy weird area, but Inside there's more, I don't know, there's just apparently a second ending. So I'm very curious to see what that's all about, because I was unaware of that until quite recently. But otherwise, that has been my week. So how about you, Vice?
Well, I think Old Man Stumpy wanted to add something a little bit there.
Oh, my fault.
Not not a large thing, but I just I wanted to express the fact that I was a little bit happy that for your first Patreon sponsored stream, someone suggested a game that was kind of right in your wheelhouse and not really far outside your usual line of work in terms of what you let's play. And I don't know if this is a spoiler, but I was curious if somebody has yet sponsored something which is really out there for you to try to let's play.
No, so here's the thing.
Princess Maker all the way.
Yeah, son of a, yeah, make it to the end credits of Farmville. But no, actually,
Stardew Valley.
That'd be interesting, but yeah. But the funny thing is, you mentioned that, but at this point, I have had a few games requested. But what's interesting is that I've actually had a couple people ask what kind of games I would prefer to play, because on my tier on the Patreon, it says just to be on the safe side, note that I have the right to refuse a particular game if it's if it's not that this would happen, but if someone requested something that's just not doable, like hentai or the guy game, which is probably outright illegal to own in this country, something like that. But it would have to be a pretty extenuating circumstance for me to shoot something down. Obviously, I would take a second suggestion, but I don't want to just be I'll play any game you want, except for, and I narrow it down to the one game I actually want to play. It's it's my request instead. But mostly the reason I would turn something down would probably be either that, which again I don't expect anyone to actually request that stuff, or if I'm playing a series, I would prefer to do the next game in the series. I would not want someone to request Resident Evil 7. I have not yet done 4, 5, and 6, not to mention the 12,000 other Resident Evil games, like something like that. So the people have so far. I've gotten, it was 3 or 4. There was Inside. There was a game that I've actually been wanting to play and I have not yet. So that itch will be scratched. A game that I do not own, but I've had recommended for a while, so I'll be looking into that one as well. I forgot if there was a 4th game, but like at the very least, it'll be interesting to take a look at. And a couple of these I have been hyped for. Oh no, I remember the 4th one. The 4th one was another short-ish, like on the short side, PC game that's in like the point-and-click territory. So like, what's cool is that these are games that the people think I would like, which is really nice. It's not just like get everything in GTA 5 or something. Like that would be a little out there for someone like me. So it's kind of cool how that's worked out.
Yeah, I mean, I do find this really interesting. Obviously, you're not the only Let's Player that I follow, and a lot of them have Patreons, and they use that as a venue to get ideas for, like, B-side Let's Plays in addition to their usual fare. And it is, like, kind of interesting to see what kind of games come out of that. Like, it's stuff that they would have never thought about before, and I was curious.
Well,
like,
yeah.
Like, I always make the joke about making you play Super Mario World by donating to your Patreon stream.
I mean, you could.
I haven't yet because it feels really weird for me to like pay you $20 to play a video game. Like,
yeah, it is kind of funny, but yeah, like the idea that you would do that. It's like now you do a full playthrough of Alundra. God damn it!
It's like dance for me, Lotus.
Yes. I want a perfect run through of.
You better
Bloodborne.
do the game I suggest, or else it's rude because I'm giving you money.
Yeah. Oh.
And you're my friend for now.
Oh yeah, I know where you live. But
I know your mother personally. I could talk to her about how badly
if I leave this $20 under your door instead of under your Patreon, will you feel obligated?
It didn't go through the official channels. Piss off. No, I'm just waiting for something outrageous though, like like a complete title playthrough of like Tales of Destiny 2. It's just like, I'm not doing. I don't think I have the talent for that.
The talent to grind.
No, like Tales of Destiny 2 has like, the Final Fantasy 9 stuff where some things are only attainable if you beat the game in, like before a certain period of time has passed. So like grinding directly combats that one title, but you get where
I recall, like the Tales games have that where you get achievements for doing really weird things, like not using items for the first like 10 hours of the game.
Yeah, it's freaking insane. Oh, speaking of which, actually, there was one Tales game. It was one of the PS2 ones, I think. Or maybe PS3 that really entertained me. Maybe it was like Vesperia or something. But I love this one boss you fight in the Coliseum.
Oh, that's Barbados. It's actually he's a character in the actual Destiny 2, I think.
Oh, nice.
Not
Eternia, real Destiny 2. It's so funny because whenever you use an item, he he's triggered to activate like a super attack that's called No Items Ever. So like you just use a healing item or whatever, and all of a sudden like when he goes immediately into his super art. And just this like 3-hit combo, like no items ever. And you take like an insane amount of damage. Like oh god,
Jesus.
And he's also voiced by Norio Wakamoto in Japanese, so it's really entertaining to hear Norio Wakamoto scream because it always is. He's so fun.
If I recall, in the original Tales of Destiny 2, he actually also shows up if you like grind too much on the world map for levels.
Oh god,
he'll just like show up and kill you.
That's the worst when that happens. Like I'm almost ready to fight. What's that? You're level 100? That means secret boss comes out. Like, oh god. Like the Tales of Eternia had a secret dungeon with a secret boss, and that's the one thing in the game that leveled up with you because that secret dungeon is hard. So if you're like, I better level, and if you get to level 100, like this guy is freaking impossible. He just like ruins your day. Like he's like this super version of someone you've never even met before, but I've only heard about, and you're like, oh no, and he just destroys you. It's rough.
Right.
So that was my week. So yeah. So how about you, Vice?
So I had a whole week off here. I took a week's vacation to entertain Retro Gamer from last week. So he could have a full Philadelphia experience here. For anybody that doesn't know, he lives in Ireland. He's a native Dubliner, and he and I have been really good friends for around like 12 years or so. We met on the Hardcore Gaming 101 forums, and we kind of were pen pals for a long time. I asked if anybody could buy me some Europe-only games. over on the HG 101 forums, and he obliged, and we had been trading packages back and forth. Me getting him North American only games and things like that. You know, I would get him like some classics, like Konami would release North American only games such as like The Lone Ranger, for instance, and that's a really great game. It's a kind of a shame that it never came out in any other territory other than ours, because it's a really good game and it's technically impressive. It has some really nice voice samples in it, in addition to being a good game. You know, we do these things quite often. You know, he and I have even gotten each other high-profile titles. Like I got him a copy of Earthbound, and he got me a copy of Terranigma.
Yeah, that's both of those are
English.
ridiculous.
Yeah, that's kind of like an even trade right there, in terms of rarity and sought after titles. So and they're similar in that they're both RPGs that were obscure. In their own ways, I guess. We've been really good friends for a long time, and I went over to Ireland last year to visit him, and this year I got to entertain him. And I live in the Philadelphia area. I live about 15 minutes out of Philadelphia, and we played a lot of games in addition to having him on the podcast. We got a chance to play Enter the Gungeon together. We did the co-op mode, which was a lot of fun. I think it's one of the coolest ways to play that game. I think it's a good way to play that game because just like any game, kind of like Binding of Isaac or any game that has roguelike elements, any bit of a little bit of help is a good thing in these things. So it was a lot of fun, and there's a lot of tension and a lot of things you can do to help each other in that game. So it was a lot of fun, and we had a blast. We also took in another similar game. We took turns on Nuclear Throne as well, and I also got per his conversation at last week's podcast. We got to play. I got to watch him play Battlegrounds. Player Unknown's
Battlegrounds.
Yeah. Well, I can't just call it Battlegrounds. I'm sorry.
Skies of Arcadia: Legends, if you please.
Kevin Smith's Clerks 2. So, George Lucas's Rogue One.
What?
But
that's the four heroes of right. the four heroes of light of movies.
Kinda. It was a lot of fun watching him play that game. I would say that it's not the type of game I would like to play personally, because I think I would get really frustrated that like my progress was completely deleted every single time. And a lot of it's just random, like whether you saw the person coming after you or not, or whether you were able to find the proper equipment to fight whatever you were going to come up against. I think it's cool in concept, but definitely not my type of game. Definitely something I like to watch because it's funny. Because the person can die very easily. But it's just one of those things. And I got to play Fury for the first time. So this one was inspired by Lotus giving me the vinyl of Fury. So I decided to play the game. And boy, is that my type of game. I love it. It reminds me of Sin and Punishment in a lot of ways. Very much a treasure kind of game, where you're given a set of mechanics, and there's a bunch of bosses, and they kind of all have their way of getting you to express those mechanics in order to beat them. It's really neat. Definitely a boss rush kind of mode, and one that's timing based, and it's so much fun.
The format kind of reminds me of since you mentioned treasure games, Bangeo Legends, the DS version of Bangeo, where in the game gives you character mechanics and a loadout that you can design for yourself, and then it just posits a series of challenges for you that you can tackle at your leisure.
Yeah, and I like that kind of boss rush mode mentality of you going up against a bunch of freaks, and you're also a freak yourself, so. It also reminds me, and this is not surprising me, a lot about Afro Samurai, the arts done by the person who did Afro Samurai.
Oh, no kidding.
So yeah. It has a lot of tropes that in common with Afro Samurai as well, and the whole climbing the tower and defeating a series of enemies, and also you have an imaginary friend just like in Afro Samurai.
Okay.
In fact, it's kind of it seems like a spiritual successor in some ways. It uses the same story structure.
So this is what Afro Samurai 2, that was so bad it was removed from Steam, turned into, and now it's good.
Yeah. Apparently the second video game, not the second movie. The second movie was quite good.
The second movie was great.
Series.
Yeah. There was an Afro Samurai video game for PS3, and
it's decent.
I heard it was good. And Afro Samurai 2 came out for a very short time on Steam, and it was
like a week.
Yeah, it was such a bug-ridden mess that it was just outright quashed. And apparently, even without the bugs, it was nothing really to brag about at all.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of the Afro Samurai series in general, so I'm glad to see that continued in one form or another. And I do love the music, so I'm glad that I have it in vinyl.
Yeah, the music is amazing, and I also really dig the crazy like 80s-ish neon aesthetic. That whole game looks like you're playing like psychedelic Tron or something.
Yeah, that's actually probably my favorite type of aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
Is
so you must.
That's why I love Hotline Miami and things like that.
Well, no, you probably love Far Cry Blood Dragon.
Oh,
no, you did play it. You have played it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And we also took some turns playing the Disney Afternoon Collection. We played Darkwing Duck and the original DuckTales on that. Had
nice.
quite fun. Quite a bit large amount of fun doing that. In addition to playing, of course, Castlevania 3. And I have to say that anybody who says that the original DuckTales is an easy game is a complete liar. Because I've been terrible at that game, but I thought it was maybe just me, but then Retro Gamer was playing it as well, and he's just like, no, this game is really hard. So I'm glad to hear that.
I will agree with you that like I remember playing DuckTales a lot as a kid, and I sort of like abstracted over how long it took me to get used to the controls, right? Because pogoing is
strange.
Like
they're
pretty
very
hard.
strange.
Yeah, and like I went back and tried to play DuckTales 2 because I'd never played that, and I just like I could not get past the first level in like an hour of playing. You know, whichever one I chose, I can't remember. But like they're not trivial to play.
Well, I think I kind of liken it to like Contra. Like when Contra is one of the easiest games for me to beat, but I've also beaten it a billion times, and ever since I was 5 years old, like playing this game. So like, I could beat that game, usually 1 credit, and I can go as far as to not losing a life.
Right.
But it's not an easy game.
Yeah,
I just memorized it.
It's the speedrunning problem, right? When you watch a speedrunner, they make games look incredibly easy, but you ignore the fact that they've probably performed, several frame-perfect tricks at a minimum, like per hour of that run.
Yeah, and actually, even during the run, it's kind of funny because I've seen addressed repeatedly. Sometimes people will applaud for tricks that look really cool, but are actually really easy to do. And then there are something that you didn't even know was a trick at all. And like it's like, oh, dude, that was literally frame perfect button pressing. Like you should clap for this, even though you kind of saw nothing. It's kind of interesting how that works. And actually, similarly, I had mentioned last podcast, someone was playing Ninja Gaiden on the Master System, but he had a really, really dry delivery system, and he was like kind of taking jabs at the game. And some people, like I said, some people in the comment section really weren't having it, and they were like, "Oh man, like why is this guy being like such a downer on the game or whatever?" It's kind of taken away from my experience. But like, you gotta remember the meta humor of it. Like clearly the guy can't hate the game that much because he's probably played it for hundreds of hours to get this good at it. Yeah,
obviously he loves it. Yeah.
Like he's just using ironic humor.
I mean, DuckTales was one of those games that I didn't really play that often when I was a kid. I of course, was an NES kid, just like a lot of other people our age, and my brother was a huge DuckTales fan growing up, and I kind of, watched, episodes into that. I was more, a cognizant viewer around, when Darkwing Duck came out. DuckTales was kind of I was still young to watch DuckTales and like remember it and think about the episodes and all that stuff. And you know, I kind of saw reruns and things like that later on. But he had played DuckTales quite a bit, but it was never a game that I rented a lot. In fact, I personally rented Chip and Dale a lot, so I could beat Chip and Dale no problem. But
that game's also pretty hard, I think.
Yeah, no, they're not easy. I would say that Chip and Dale's an easier game, objectively, but it's still not an easy game. It's an NES game. They're all hard.
Yeah.
Almost all of them. So, anyway, I did want to throw that out there because like I played this and I'm like, man, I'm like dying a ton here.
Well, yeah, I mean,
so,
even
like, I got my butt kicked.
Even when I played Sonic 2 for the first time in like 15 years, I was like, wow, like I used to sleepwalk through this game as a kid, but there's actually like challenge here that I forgot existed.
Sure.
Yeah,
especially when you get in the later levels.
There's a lot of instances where I want to play a retro game that I'd never played before, and like I just can never bring myself to do it if I don't have like a lot of time, because I know that it will probably be more difficult than I expect it to be. Just like thinking that I'm a better gamer than I used to be.
And sometimes even if the game, like sometimes it shouldn't be challenging, but once you get used to like such and such a quirk of the controls, it'll feel better. Like, oh, you're supposed to jump because you got to remember there's a delay in the jump. It's something like that. And once you get that down, it plays a lot better. But you just got to remember, like Wing Fortress Zone in Sonic 2 had a little bit of that, where like there's this platforming section where you got to remember how far you jump. You don't want to just hold right. You got to kind of like fiddle with your position in the air a little bit. It's just like, and you never do this at any other point in the game, so it feels a little weird, except for maybe like a couple other points.
It's like the original version of like the Dark Souls aesthetic, where if you don't know exactly what you're doing, the game will kill you, and you have to learn how to get around that.
Pretty much,
yeah, precisely. And let me see here. We also played Capcom Arcade Cabinet, which was the collection that they put on the Xbox 360 and PS3 last generation. It was a very good collection, very accurate. It's a lot of early Capcom classics. I think the latest they go is 1943 Kai. So there's a lot of early games like Vulgus, I think is their first game anyway. And then like things like Commando. It's backwards compatible on Xbox One. That's why we were playing it, and we had a really good time playing it because when Retro was here, he bought some of the Capcom classics that had come out on the NES that never came to Europe, like Commando on the NES was pretty neat. So and he had picked up Gunsmoke as well. So
we've been over this Gun.Smoke.
Gun.Smoke, yeah. Gun.Smoke is actually one of my favorite arcade games. I'm not very good at it. I just like it. It's one of those games that I could get to max to the third level. It's a very, 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 very difficult game.
It does look cool, though.
It's a lot of fun. There's no other game like it in terms of control scheme, because you have 3 buttons. The one to the left shoots to 2 bullets to the left. The one in the middle shoots 2 bullets in the middle, because you have right and left hands, and also a right button that obviously shoots 2 bullets to the right. But you can use any combination of those buttons as well. It kind of like has an analog feel, even though it's all buttons.
Now, here's a question. If you're using a combination, if you do, let's say, up and left, do you shoot one shot left and one shot up, or do you shoot both shots diagonally up and to the left?
You mean middle, the middle button, right?
Excuse me, left and middle. Yeah, do you shoot...
If you do left and middle, it shoots diagonally between between the center shot.
So you can fire in 8 directions then.
Correct, and you can also do a Y shot where if you do
each hand.
left and right shot, you can do a left and right shot at the same time.
That's pretty cool.
So it's really neat and really really great how you have all those options to use to your advantage. Because a lot of games back then, were stiff. So giving you all of that that full range of shooting ability is really neat. It's a lot of fun. We took turns playing that. We also played Black Tiger, which is kind of a spiritual predecessor to Magic Sword later on.
Wait a second. They have a game called Black Tiger?
Yeah.
You know, I wonder seriously if the Resident Evil 1 Spider Boss Black Tiger was an intentional nod then to their old game.
It probably is.
Yeah,
probably is.
Because I know Sega was all about doing that, but Capcom, I know they're referential, but I didn't know in that sense.
Yeah, no, it probably is. We played Commando, the original Commando, and also the original Ghosts and Goblins. God damn, is that game hard?
You know, Ghosts and Goblins. I wonder if the Resident Evil boss Ghosts and Goblins is a reference.
George Lucas's Ghosts and Goblins.
But it's just it was a really great collection. I wish Capcom would they're really good at celebrating their early games, but they're not very good at celebrating their late arcade games.
Yeah.
For one reason or another, they don't like releasing their like a collection of CPS3 games. Let's say like Red Earth. They've never released Red Earth or...
Oh, that's true, yeah.
The arcade versions of Star Gladiator or Plasma Sword. I mean, Plasma Sword is very similar to the Dreamcast version, obviously. You know, it's a Naomi game, but Star Gladiator, why not give us like the Cyberbots games? There are two of those, a beat 'em up and a fighting game. They've never released those in collections.
The closest I've seen to anything Red Earth outside of the arcade was probably like one of the characters cameoing in, or not cameoing, but just appearing in Neo Geo Battle Coliseum.
No, it's not that. It's Capcom Battle Evolution.
That's what it was.
Yeah, that's a Neo Geo game. Is Neo Geo Battle Coliseum?
No, I'd forgotten if there was a crossover or what. But like that really threw me off. It's just like, who are you? Like, wait, you're the witch from Red Earth?
Yeah.
All right.
I think it's a T-Rex actually. It's like a gigantic T-Rex sprite.
I think the witch was also in there though. It just really threw me off. I forgot about the T-Rex.
I mean, that's
actually.
it's not the best game in the world, but like it's still cool to have.
Yeah, well, it's like in Capcom versus SNK 2, like, Morrigan from Darkstalker shows up. It's like, remember Darkstalkers? Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, they have tons of games that they've never ported. Another one's 19XX, one of my favorite shmups of all time, has never been ported. It's the 1944 is very rarely ported. I think it's only ported once. I wish they would do that. That just kind of reminds me that those collections are great, but and they usually do a really good job with them. They have like tons of archival materials and things like that. But
yeah,
it's just one of those things. But one last thing, real quick. I did get one new vinyl in addition to the Theory one that you gave me, and this is a brand new one. It just came out. Mondo T's just released Super Castlevania 4. Which is a great soundtrack. One of my favorite soundtracks of all time. A really great one for the Super Nintendo. Nice. And so I was excited to get that. Not only is it another Castlevania vinyl, this would be obviously my fourth, but I hope they continue it because Bloodlines, the Genesis game, which would be the next logical progression. I think they want to do Symphony of the Night next, which I would still be happy with, but I hope they don't stop at doing some of the obscure games, like Dracula X absolutely deserves to have a vinyl.
Yeah, I would also kind of hope for the arcade vinyl, just because the arcade game itself was kind of a bunch of like covered classics. It was like a greatest hits soundtrack in and of itself.
Yeah, the Haunted Castle had some good music in it, but it was a terrible game.
Oh, I didn't mean Haunted Castle. I meant Castlevania Arcade. Like the rail shooter.
Oh, okay.
The rail whip. Yeah, the other.
No.
The rail whipper.
Yeah, that was way better.
That was like a greatest hit soundtrack. I don't even remember what Haunted Castle sounded like, and I saw like a playthrough of it.
Yeah. No. I hope they keep going with it. Maybe if they do like a sampler of some of the obscure ones, like if they did all three of the original Game Boy games on one vinyl, that would be kind of neat. Game Boy Advance games, it would be really neat to hear uncompressed versions of those.
Yeah.
Because they had phenomenal music on them, but they were compromised due to the hardware. I would. There's some really good soundtracks.
Oh, and one of the
soundtracks
soundtracks was partly made by Yuzo Koshiro, wasn't it?
Yeah, actually, Portrait of Ruin, in particular. Portrait of Ruin is the second DS game.
Okay.
And that has a lot of great music from everybody involved in that one. So, the entire series has great music. There really aren't too many games that have bad music. Even the N64 games have great music.
Yeah, I didn't mind. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
it was different, but it worked.
Yeah, I think Symphony of the Night's going to be the next one if I had to guess, but I hope they don't neglect Bloodlines because it's up there with my favorites in the series. But three's my obvious favorite, but Bloodlines is probably my second favorite
nice.
in terms of soundtrack. So
I hope they do Contra, just the one Simon Belmont joke track from Contra 3 Hardcore, and include that. Like the goofy vampire killer theme.
Yeah, really. And then you marry a monkey.
Yeah. I just could not believe how weird that was, though, hearing any kind of vampire killer like on
any other game other than Zelda.
Yeah, just hearing Vampire Killer on a Genesis. Like, I know Sega Genesis got Bloodlines, but it's still just like, wow, what? Like, Simon Belmont's in, like, on the Genesis? It's the weirdest.
Bloodlines is an amazing soundtrack.
Yeah.
And it was done by a rookie composer, too. So there's some really good remixes of old tunes on that, too. So it's a top-notch soundtrack. I hope it really gets it to shine as a vinyl. And that's pretty much it. We can move on to questions here.
Sure, I think we have time for one. David Portnov asks, what are your movie canons? That is, what are some of the movies you think that at some point, like, everybody should watch?
This is a tough question to answer. I would say, because it depends on how you want to enjoy movies.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to study movies, there are certain movies that you should watch.
That were like iconic in movie making, like The Wizard of Oz or like Citizen Kane or Alien or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna be a Philistine and say that, you know, my favorite movie is 2001: Space Odyssey. I'm not gonna say that everybody needs to watch that.
That is not for everyone.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not an asshole and going to say that. But I would say, like, if you want to understand like some really great things about movies that like everybody should watch, I would say Godfather 1 and 2 and Terminator 1 and 2 are like essential movie watching for pretty much anybody. Rocky, that's another really great one. Those are essential movies for people to enjoy the history of movies, and they're very popular ones. They're all movies that anybody would like. So you'd be hard pressed to find people that don't understand that those movies, all five of those movies, are important.
Yeah. So
I would say those. Start off by saying those. There's plenty of others.
Mm-hmm.
So I am not a big I don't watch a lot of movies. I'm not a movie enthusiast. So like I'm not really well suited to answer this question, but like philosophically I know how I'd go about doing it, and that came from when I first saw my list of top 100 like books everyone must read before they die. And so when I read a review, someone gave their opinion on that. They said that it really heavily overemphasized, you know, which we are wont to do here in America. It heavily overemphasized Western and European and American authors.
Yeah.
And the recommendation was that a book that was not on the list, which was 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I think it's a Nobel Prize winning book. Was of greater merit than like basically any book on that list, and I went and read that instead, and it was fantastic. So like if I was going to approach this, you know, recommendation, I would say, you know, you'll get lots of people who will tell you what American movies, you know, you should watch, or what Hollywood movies you should watch. But I would urge people to think about, like, for example, you know, what directors do we know commonly outside of the Western world besides like Akira Kurosawa? And even then, we partially only know him because he influenced you know, a lot of directors who made American westerns.
Yeah.
You know, so like I would urge people to look up, you know, the best Bollywood movies to understand what that kind of culture is like. To look up Japanese movies, to look up Chinese movies. Like
that's sound advice. Yeah,
yeah, it really
I
is.
didn't even think of it like that.
yeah. So, how about you, Lotus?
I mean, like from a Western perspective, you know, of the stuff I'm familiar with, I again, like I'm also not like a movie buff. Just one of the movies I can think of though that's just timeless and just plain fun, and it's not for studious purposes. I just wholeheartedly recommend The Princess Bride, because that's just
a great movie.
It's a genuinely good movie, and with a couple of exceptions, it's pretty much timeless, and it's probably the most famous example of like a movie where it's like the grandfather reading the story of the movie to the kid. It's like one of those movies, but this is before they became kind of cliche after a little while. It's just a genuinely like just fun for the whole family kind of movie, and I have fun watching it every time. I don't know, like I mean, I wouldn't say it's my #1 movie of all time, but it's one of the few that I can think of where it's like, everyone should give this a shot.
Yeah, I mean, having said that, a lot of the Disney movies that we grew up with were some of the best ones of all time. So, I mean, like Lion King, Aladdin, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, I would say are
and
all
Beauty and the
essential
Beast
viewing.
killed, yeah.
Oh no! All of them are really great in their.
Well, they all have their own way.
All important. They were all important to animation and storytelling in children's media.
Yeah.
I mean, Beauty and the Beast was the first time I think I ever recognized a children's movie specifically trying to be feminist.
And wasn't Beauty and the Beast the first animated movie to win Best Picture?
It was nominated for Best
Nominated,
Picture.
excuse me.
Yeah.
That, which is still a feat at the time. This is especially because it was before Best Animated Picture existed as a category. So it was actually competing against every single other movie made that year, and not just, you know, cartoons. So like, because it narrows the category down a lot. So it was like that good that it at least got a shout out.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough question to answer, because there's a lot of shining examples of a lot of different genres that you should watch before branching out.
Well, that's another thing. Like, I love comedies, or I love action movies, but like, what if you don't? You know, like that.
Yeah. You don't want to go into straight like jazz. You know, jazz is a difficult music, a type of music to play and to listen to in a lot of ways sometimes. So like, because it's theoretical, right? So so you want something a little poppy to get people interested. Same thing with what you would recommend people listen to on their first listen to a band that has some deeper cuts. You would say some of their poppy stuff first, right?
Probably like the stuff you might hear on the radio.
Stuff.
The stuff you would hear on the radio every afternoon instead of like their underground stuff before they got famous or whatever. They're like experimental phases.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that I picked, I mean, those are by no means, the end of what essential viewing in certain categories, but they exemplify what I'm talking about. I mean, like for anime, I would pick Akira. Or something like that, because
Ghost in the Shell is another really popular one, which is also a great movie. Well, I mean, the
animated
one.
The animated one was iconic. That actually was a direct inspiration of The Matrix, and in fact, the first Matrix movie. And in fact, within the first Matrix movie, you could actually see individual shots that were directly taken from Ghost in the Shell, like when Morpheus does the jump program and lands on the other roof, and he lands on one knee and cracks a roof tile. That was from Ghost in the Shell.
Or how about when Neo wakes up? In that...
the hole being plugged in, and not only that, but the very end. It's a tiny thing, but remember when agents are chasing Neo through like some city street and they're firing at him, and they hit some random watermelons from a watermelon vendor? That was also like just that shooting watermelons was in Ghost in the Shell. Like, remember this? Like, if you've seen Ghost in the Shell, like, hey, like, so like. The Wachowskis were clearly inspired by anime. I mean, they made the entire Speed Racer movie. Like, they clearly have a history with, Japanese animation, which is kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could go into a billion references, but I think this is a good start for it, and people can get kind of the idea. But I mean, just as Old Man Stompy said, I recommend to anybody look up a best of list.
Yeah.
Because that will at least get you familiar with some of the deeper cuts on so you could start saying, oh, I want to look at more Sam Raimi movies, because I watched his best or his most well known. Like I saw Evil Dead 2, and now I can move on to something more obscure that he's done. His Western movie I actually really like.
The Quick and the Dead.
The Quick and the Dead. I love
that was a
movie.
blast. Yeah.
Gene Hackman's a bad guy in that. I absolutely love that. But
I saw that movie well before I saw Evil Dead too. I had no idea there was a Sam Raimi movie. I was like, hey, it was pretty good.
Yeah,
sideways from that, you can look at like Spider-Man as the movie that made it actually fun, that actually successfully expressed the joy of being a superhero.
Well, that is true. Yeah, Batman, Daredevil, even the X-Men, like they were pretty dark, gritty movies, and like Spider-Man was like, I'm swinging. Like, I mean, Peter Parker is ironically one of the most famous heroes to have just all sorts of personal trouble, but when he was Spider-Man, he's
enjoying it.
Yeah, he was swinging around being Spider-Man.
We've talked about this as being like problematic in the DC universe, that they don't like understand the joy of being a hero, right?
Yeah,
and, like and that's partially what the Avengers the canon tries to express, and it kind of started with Spider-Man. That was the movie that really let superhero movies take that foothold that allowed them to become like one of the dominant genres.
Like again, even the X-Men movies were like really gray, but Spider-Man and then the subsequent Marvel Cinematic Universe, like they're just plain more colorful. There's just like there are things to look at in those movies other than just characters and their problems. It's just like, look at how beautiful New York is, like especially Spider-Man 2. My God.
Yeah, I mean, I would even love to do a reactive sometime, and go into some really good recommendations on my end. Because I longtime listeners know that I absolutely love cinema, and I love talking about it and teaching about it. So I think I would love to do that sometime for our listeners.
In principle, we could do a series, right? We could do film, we could do books, we could do games, we could do professional wrestling, we could do anime, we could do like all these genres of media,
And by the way, I had forgotten regarding anime. I probably would throw in Miyazaki's Spirited Away.
Miyazaki movie, really, but Spirited Away definitely.
Yeah, I've only seen some Miyazaki movies, but Spirited Away is probably my number one, with Princess Mononoke being a close second.
Yeah, I was gonna say Princess Mononoke was my.
Spirited Away is like I always waffle back and forth between those two movies, but Mononoke has more of an edge to it, and like, if you just want to sit down and watch a movie, like Spirited Away is probably the more user-friendly one. Mononoke has like a distinct message and purpose, where Spirited Away, there are messages in the movie, but it's more of like anyone can appreciate this kind of thing.
For sure. Having said that, I was just reminded, I wanted to tell Old Man Stumpy just real quick here before we move on to our outro, that I did catch New Japan Pro Wrestling's airing on American television over the weekend, or last 2 weeks, and I was really excited to watch it.
Yeah.
And because I didn't know it was coming to American broadcast.
Right.
And I was sitting there watching it with my roommate, who's not like as into things as we are, and I was like, he was like saying, "Oh, isn't Japanese pro wrestling supposed to be the best?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's supposed to be really awesome. I can't wait to watch it." And we sat there watching this match. I don't know who it was between, because I just don't remember. But one of them was the he was a member of the Gun Club or some
Bullet Club.
The Bullet Club, yes. Okay.
The Bullet Club.
Okay. Yeah, and he was versus one of the face characters. I don't know. One of the most popular face characters. I just don't know him.
All right.
And it proceeded to be one of the worst wrestling matches I've ever seen in my life.
So are you saying it was the Four Heroes of Light of professional wrestling?
No, it's more like I was given one chance to convince my roommate that this was something that I know is good, and that I know was a bad example, just by seeing it. But
that's very unfortunate because I mean, so it's important to note that like the really top level matches these guys have, they take a huge toll on their bodies, and some of them do kind of mail it in when it's not like a headlining match.
Yeah, yeah. Even the face character or a face wrestler had like a shoulder brace on during the match. And so it was a very one-sided match that I knew was going to flip totally around in the face's favor. Because he was just the heel was just beating the crap out of him, for like 10 minutes.
On free television, the faces tend to win all the time because it keeps people happy.
Yeah.
Same thing with house shows. The faces tend to win the main events because it sends the crowd home happy. Unfortunately, if the match is bad, then nobody's happy.
Yeah, it was one of the worst. Like I said, it was just so one-sided and slow. I mean, he was basically not fighting back.
It's like hard to say. Like that's actually what turns a lot of people off of WWF wrestling because it's part of the style that the face gets beat down a lot in pretty much every main event match. It's pretty rare for the face to rally substantially or control the majority of the match. And it's supposed to be the case. If you're into wrestling, you're supposed to hate the heel because he's stopping you from seeing the face do something really cool. But if you watch it for like 30 minutes, it gets kind of boring.
Yeah. So I just wanted to throw this out real quick that I had a very mediocre experience there. But I will continue to watch it. I haven't given up.
Yeah. So again, the match between the actual tournament they held in America recently to crown a U.S. champion was supposed to be fantastic. So if you can find those matches somewhere on the internet, then I recommend watching them.
Will do. And that's the show for this week. We want to thank our fans that contributed questions. Please keep giving them to us. Keep us supplied with awesome topics by submitting questions of your own to our YouTube and SoundCloud pages. We just got a group of them from General Ledger on SoundCloud, which I manage. So definitely please do submit questions wherever you can. While there, please give us thumbs up, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps us promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement keeps the show going. You can also catch us on Thursdays on our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in pop culture. Finally, you can friend me as Vize the Bold, VYSETHEBOLD, on Steam, Xbox Live, PSN, and Twitter.
And as for me, you could follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You could hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. Or, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive streams, and potentially selecting upcoming Let's Plays, then maybe check out my Patreon at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
And you can find me as Old Man Stompy basically everywhere I want to be found, which is pretty much every major gaming service except for Steam. And you can also find...
How about GameTap?
GameTap? I might have had a GameTap account at some point. I don't really recall. You can also find our erstwhile colleague, Pyro Jack Frost, as Pyro Jack Frost everywhere. Please contact him and tell us to please tell him to please play Final Fantasy XIV with us.
And his personal phone number is 856-555-5535.
Nani?
Seems highly unlikely. 1-900
Yeah.
PRYOGACKFROST.
Please somebody dial that and tell me what comes up.
If you dial an infinite random number into the phone number, some 10-digit number will liably be his. Right?
It'll take a very long time. Anyway,
and you'll get a lot of wrong numbers.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for listening, guys. We'll catch you on Thursday.
Until next time,
Bye.
Everyone.
Cheers.